This is our last part to the Washington Black series, so if you haven't seen our other parts, go watch them. But basically, what had happened was, the story follows George, who used to be a slave with his guardian Kit. A man named Titch took him on as an assistant for his invention ventures so that he could get into the RSL, the Royal Science League. However, Titch was too focused on impressing his dad at the Arctic. When he didn't get his dad's approval, he abandoned George during a blizzard. The story also focuses on George's later life, where he falls for a mixed-race woman named Tanna, who was supposed to wed Mr. McGee, and she was forced to hide her identity because her father whack. Tanna fell in love with George, though. She tried convincing her father, Goff, but he wants his daughter to be with a white man. Goff does, however, likes George's inquisitive mind. There were also some bounty hunters chasing after George to capture him because they think George killed a big back man, Phil, when in actuality, Phil just killed himself and wanted to frame George as his killer. He was psychotic and fat. In the most recent episode, the bounty hunter and George fell off a cliff, but George managed to survive thanks to Tanna and Medwin. Let's continue. Right after losing Titch in the blizzard, George lays in the snow in despair. He opens his eyes and finds himself in Dahomey. Kit is also there, and George thinks that he's already dead. But the snow falls again around him, and he is pulled back from death and continues to live. At the present time, after having fallen off a cliff, George wakes up to find Tanna looking after him. Although he is relieved to learn that the fugly bounty hunter, Willard, is already dead, he is worried he won't make it to the World Science Expo. Tanna asked him to rest first and not worry about the contest. Medwin then walks in, wanting to talk to George. He envies George because he has someone who always worries about him. So George mentions that Angie is that person for Medwin. The truth is, Angie was married to Medwin's best friend, Winston. Winston asked Medwin to look after Angie once he was gone, but Medwin and Angie fell for each other. Medwin doesn't want to give in to his feelings because he feels that it's wrong, but George helps him understand that he and Angie are both free to love each other. So after talking to George, Medwin finally decides to clear things with Angie. He says that he will no longer run away from her. Finally, they have their first kiss with nothing holding them back. I love it when two foreign people get together. Then Tanna tells her father that she broke off the engagement with Mayonnaise McGee, but she explains that Mr. McGee is gracious enough to still pay their debts. She reveals that she and George are together, and she wants to take him to London with them. George has named the invention the aquarium. Mr. Goff thinks it's ridiculous to take George with them because there has never been a black applicant for the RSL ever. But Tanna reminds him that George invented the aquarium and Mr. Goff doesn't know how it was made. So she wants George to get the credit he deserves. Mr. Goff says he'll put his own name in the application and then talk to the people involved and tell them that the aquarium is George's invention. Better not let us down. After a tearful goodbye with Angie and Medwin, George is about to hop on a ship to London. The man taking down names realizes George has a bounty on his head, but I ain't see nothing, and lets George sail off. On the day of the exhibit, Mr. Goff worries a lot that no one will show up, but the RSL judges arrive, and all are excited to see the aquarium. They are surprised to learn that the aquarium has kept the octopus alive for 7 weeks. While they are talking, more judges arrive, and one of them approaches George. When the man starts to sign, George knows it's Peter Haas, the gay man that memorized every vein of Titch's dad, James. Years ago, after getting shot by an arrow, Peter told James that it was just an accident and that he's still able to get on all fours for some pounding. Then Uki barged in, saying that George and Titch are missing. So James gets up right away to look for them. He braved the snowstorm to look for his son, but the old man couldn't see his way clearly, and he slipped, fell, and hurt himself. It's too bad he forgot his life alert. Because he broke his bones, he couldn't get up. Right then, the northern lights appeared in the sky, and George was mesmerized by what he was seeing. Thanks to the light, Tanna found the boy and took him back to the igloo. Because James hadn't returned yet, Tanna went out again to look for him. James was still alive, but already too weak. George confronted him for how he treated Titch. He said that Titch was very happy to know that his father was still alive, but James always treated him coldly. Knowing that he wouldn't make it, James asked George to take his final message for Titch. Then James tells Peter that he better not use another man's telescope, and also, I love you, before James dies. Once his body started to stank up the place, it was time to go. Peter gifted George an RSL bag. It's not Louis Vuitton, but he'll take it. Then, using a map and a pen, he told the boy to go to Nova Scotia, where he could be free. He said that they could travel there together by ship. Saying goodbye to Uki and Tanna was difficult. Uki got attached already, and she wanted the boy to stay with him. Although George wanted to stay, he was still worried about Kit. He wasn't sure if she was still alive, and unless he left the Arctic, he'd never know. They cried and hugged one last time, and Peter even took a photo of George. At the present time, Peter is an RSL judge for the World Science Expo. His colleague, Martin, who is also a judge, translates for him so George can understand him. Oh, I bet these two touching each other's telescopes. George admits that he's one of the creators of the aquarium, and Peter is so proud of him. Peter says that the judges were looking forward to the invention. That was why they visited their exhibit first. George then introduces them to Tanna, and she is shocked to see Peter sign his words just like George told her. George even has learned a little bit, which I'm sure comes in handy. Before they say goodbye, Peter mentions that the plantation was sold when the Slavery Abolition Act was passed. He believes that those freed came to London to look for jobs. He advises George to visit the Wild Estate in Hampshire to know more. When it's time to announce the winner of the World Science Expo, Mr. Goff wins for the aquarium. Mr. Goff is called to the stage to receive the medal. He can't believe that he has finally achieved his dream. He promises to make more aquariums as a gift to the world. Tanna and George are waiting for Mr. Goff to call George to the stage, but the old man never does. Instead, he claims the invention as his own. Goff looking like a salt and pepper hairy testicle. Tanna is extremely disappointed. She apologizes to George and promises to write a letter to the committee so George can get credit for his invention. Tanna can't believe that her father broke his promise, but George is not surprised because the man white. As they wallow in sadness, Mr. Goff invites them to celebrate. The professional gaslighter says that it's not the best time to tell the world that George was the inventor of the aquarium. Then he takes off the medal and hands it to George. But George doesn't want to accept it. He says that he will make another invention, a flying machine, and this time no one else can take it from him. Tanna is heartbroken, and she says goodbye to her father. Our girl stood on business. Following Peter's advice, Tanna and George head to the Wilds estate in Hampshire. A familiar face opens the door for them. Gaius. Gaius cries upon seeing George, saying that he's the first child from the plantation he saw grow up. George introduces Tanna first before asking about Kit. Inside, Gaius shows them a ledger. Kit was named Catherine, and she has died already. Then Gaius reveals that Kit was pregnant when she arrived. She gave birth to a baby boy, and that boy was George. In the past, on 1817 in the kingdom of Dahomey, Kit, whose real name was Nawi, was a general for Dahomeys. She and the other female warriors worked directly under the king, in charge of keeping him safe. Unfortunately, given this great responsibility, they are not allowed to have children. However, Nawi was starting to question if there was more to life than the one she's living. So her best friend Esi warned her to be careful or she'd get in trouble. It turned out that Nawi was meeting someone in secret. She was in love. In the present, George can't believe that everyone lied to him. Even Titch knew the truth. Gaius explains that Kit believed that if George knew she was his mother, he wouldn't ever want to leave the plantation. Later that night, George says a prayer for Kit. He's heartbroken that he left his own mother behind. Tanna tries to comfort him, but it's not easy. Then Gaius comes over, carrying a notebook. He says that it contains all the information he knows about Kit. He adds that Kit's real name was Nawi and that they both came from Dahomey. He advises George to visit his mother's home to see where she grew up. In addition to that, Gaius reveals that Titch is still alive. Soon after, George and Tanna take a ship to Morocco to find him. It's a different world, and both of them have more freedom to be together. Tanna has faith that George will be able to finish his flying machine, which she named the Wind Sailor. But she doesn't like that George is taking the effort to look for Titch. She reminds him that Titch abandoned him when he was a boy. They find Titch in the middle of a desert, and he is surprised to see George after so many years. George has a lot of questions for him and demands to know why Titch left him behind and why Titch took him away from his mother. But Titch is still his busy self, and he refuses to answer any question. This white man, selfish for real, literally separated a child from his mother just so Titch can get his father's approval. Titch shows George the project he's building. He plans to go to the moon. George tells him that it's not going to work. He knows that Titch is still trying to please his father, despite knowing that he's already dead. They confront each other, but no one wants to give in. George is angry at Titch for being insensitive and not realizing how much he hurt him. Titch then begs George to stay and help him again, saying that being in the desert alone drives him crazy. But the damage in their relationship is too deep to be healed. Still, George tells Titch the message his father left for him. James apparently wanted Titch to live life for himself and stop trying to please anybody. Titch realizes that despite their differences, his father loved him dearly. As for George, he learns that no matter how much Titch hurt him, he can't find it in him to hate his mentor. Everything is almost perfect for George, except that Tanna is not yet his completely. So one night, he proposes to her. Tanna says yes. May this love attack me. And they go straight to the honeymoon part before the wedding. Not long after, George and Tanna begin to build the windsailor. It has taken them 4 months to finish the project. But when they are done, they are both pleased. And this is what inspired the butt plug shape. The couple begins their flight, and they sail all the way to Dahomey. If they are not flying, they land their boat on the open seas. This must have had a crazy budget. Tubi could never. When they finally arrive in Dahomey, the warriors welcome them with spears. But Esi recognizes George's necklace. George reveals that he is Nawi's son, and Esi is overwhelmed by her emotions. Esi shares that Nawi used to visit the riverside to meet George's father. But Esi said Nawi described the man like he was so fine. She thought Nawi was dating Nyami, the god of sky and water. She remembers when Nawi told her about the pregnancy. There would be consequences, but Nawi was prepared to face anything to keep her child. Esi was worried, but she was also very happy for her friend. When the king's inspection took place, he discovered that Nawi was pregnant. He got mad, but Nawi insisted on keeping the baby. When she tried to fight back, the warriors, including Esi, were ready to defend the king. He then ordered for Nawi to be sold as a slave, and that is how she ended up in the plantation. Now that Tanna is giving birth, George can't help but be scared. The women block his view as if he never saw her vag before. He is so nervous that he imagines talking to his mother. Nawi doesn't regret keeping her child, and she's overjoyed that George is about to become a father. Even Tanna imagines seeing her own mother in the water, supporting her. When she finally gives birth, they name the baby girl Nawi. Tanna and George get married, and afterward, they get back on the windsailor with their daughter. As he flies high, George remembers Angie and Medwin, Peter Haas, even Uki and Panna, Nat Turner, Theodora, Barrington, and Gaius, all of them telling him to fly. They make their way to the Solomon Islands to see Tanna's family, and in the end, George has achieved everything he has ever wanted. Y'all, this series was really special and something you should check out to get the full tea. Quality cast, writing, acting, and everything. What did you guys think of this one?
Hey, if you like this video, make sure you subscribe now and turn on the notification because YouTube isn't recommending my videos. And if you'd like to watch more foolishness, click here or here.